Hey everybody, it's Troy. We're going to do a little lecture today about risk and risk management and how that applies to managing an enterprise network. So to start with, the first thing we need to do is identify or define what risk is. And uh, that's pretty simple. Risk, you guys, all of you take risks every day. They might be physical risks when you travel. They could be financial risks when you invest in your 401k or purchase a car or a home. These are risks. So within the job of being an IT admin, one of the things that you're going to have to do is understand risk management from the viewpoint of the company that you work for. All right. Because that's how well, I hope, most companies make decisions based on risk and what's called either risk appetite or risk tolerance. And that's simply how how willing are they to take a risk, but more specifically, how willing are they to take a risk in very specific areas. And that risk tolerance will change depending on market conditions and business conditions. So, um, if the economy is in a depression or a recession, then companies tend to shrink that risk appetite and shrink that risk tolerance because they already have too many other um, things coming at them that can negatively impact their business. And so they pull back on the risks that they're willing to take. So, and then the opposite is true. If the business climate is good, it's booming, if the stock market is strong, if um, innovation, especially in technology, is strong, then they're they're more likely to take risks. Uh, a perfect example of this would be in the space program. So, really quickly, in 1960, I think it was 1966, I can't remember exactly. Um, they were as they were getting ready to really crank up the Apollo program, which was the program that was going to take us to the moon. Apollo 1 was on the launch pad for a test, and a series of things happened, and the three astronauts inside the command module burned to death. They died. So the space program was halted for I think a little over 3 years. We had been taking risks as a country since the early 1960s to fulfill President Kennedy's um, goal of reaching the moon. And uh, we had been taking risks that entire time. But when that happened, the risk tolerance, risk appetite shrank dramatically. And the whole program was just stopped until they could figure this out. Same thing happened in 1986, the year I was a senior in high school. That tells you how old I am. Um, when the Space Shuttle Challenger uh, was launched, and then uh, within like 45 seconds or whatever, it exploded, and all of the crew members died. The Space Shuttle program shut down again. I think it was probably 3 years or something before they launched again. So you can see it was the same business, if you will. I know NASA is a government agency, but same business, the space business. And um, we were we were risk heavy in the 1960s until we hit Apollo 1 and we lost 3 astronauts. And then we shrank our risk tolerance. And once we figured out the problem there and fixed the engineering flaws, we cranked up the space program again. We increased our risk tolerance and our risk appetite, and we started launching missions again. And as the Apollo program came to an end, the space shuttle program started. Yeah, I like the space program, so kind of nerding out on you guys a little bit, or geeking out, or whatever you want to call it. So our 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 risk had our risk tolerance had increased the longer we were sending people into space. So then we decided that it was time that we sent up this reusable spacecraft. And so we started launching those, and we were launching those all the time. Uh, as a kid, as a teenager in high school, I lived 10 miles south of the Kennedy Space Center, and I watched multiple um, space shuttle missions launched from there. I had I had just moved away uh, to Northern California, and then the space shuttle disaster happened in 1986. Then our risk shrank until we could get a whole get a grasp on why did this happen. And so they do a root cause analysis, and we'll be talking about root cause analysis a little bit later. So just remember that term. And once they had figured it out, they started to launch the space shuttle again. Then in, let's see, 2003, January of 2003, we lost another space shuttle as they were coming in, as they were re-entering Earth's atmosphere. Um, one of the panels on the wings had been damaged at launch, and they didn't realize the extent of the damage. And as it came back in, it burned up, re-entering the atmosphere. So again, now that risk really shrank, and we for all intents and purposes stopped launching people into space. So that kind of gives you a good example to look at of how risk tolerance is always changing. So risk management needs to change as well. Okay? Now, whether you know it or not, all of you in your individual lives go through this exact same process. What I mean by that is this: you manage risk in your life every day. It's a So in economic terms, we would call this microeconomics because we're looking at a very small subsection. Okay, we're going to look at life. All of you manage risks. You're all in school. That's a risk. Well, why do I say it's a risk? Because you are investing money into an education, and you are hoping for a return on your investment, but you are not guaranteed a return on your investment. That's a risk. So, why do we take risks? Well, we take risks because we want or are looking for a reward. So risk and reward are always tied together. I'm going to open up a Word doc here so we can type some of this up and you guys can kind of get a feel for what we're talking about and take notes or whatever. So we have risk versus, I'm going to make this bigger so you guys can see it pretty well. Risk versus reward. Okay. And when we have risk versus reward, it's really simple. you take a look at the cost of the risk, and then you determine your risk tolerance. Okay. And then from there, you also put into the equation the reward. So in this case, you're going to school. Okay. And so in school, the risk is what? Money, time, and because you're sacrificing. Risk is going to be anything that you're sacrificing or that you could potentially end up sacrificing, and you have to view it as it's going to happen. That's the point. You can't say there's no risk. There's always risk. It doesn't mean that it's life and death. It just means that you're going to be sacrificing things, and you're taking a chance that it's going to work. Okay. Now, if you do your homework, no pun intended. Sorry. If you do your research, then what you're doing with research is you're making that determination of how much risk is really involved in this activity. And the riskier the activity, the less likely you are to take it on unless you determine you can tolerate it. Okay? So you have risk for school is money, time, and also that you see no gain in pay. I mean, let's be honest. The reason that people go to school and study what you guys and young ladies are studying is to get a better job or to get paid more, right? We're not dance majors. We're not, you know, studying religious comparative religions, and that's fine for people. Just do whatever you want, right? But one of the reasons we do this is in hopes that we can make more money, live a better life, provide for our families and for ourselves a better standard of living. It's just that simple. Okay? It's not about greed, but you got to have money to live. And, uh, you know, in my lifetime, I've gotten paid very little, and I've also made good money. And I can tell you that I would much rather make good money because the problems still stay the same. But at least with some money in the bank, you can take more risk, right? Good. So here we go. All right, so here's our risk. And now you have to decide, and this is the hard part, what's your risk tolerance? And this is something that's hard to quantify, especially in terms of how it's going to affect your lifestyle and the benefits to your family and things like that. Sometimes that can be really hard to quantify. And I know this very well. I understand the position that you all are in. I did not um, go back to school and finish my uh, bachelor's degree until I was 44 years old. Okay, that was 8 years ago. So I've only had my bachelor's degree for 8 years, and then uh, 2.5 years ago, I 3 years ago, I decided to go back and get my master's degree. Now, my risk tolerance um, was high for both my bachelor's and my master's. The reason it was high for me was because I had started college in 1986 and I was a poor student. Not poor financially, although I was. Um, Poor as in I was a horrible student. I I didn't study. I didn't go to class. I was an idiot, right? Um, and I paid the price for that. I didn't realize what the risk was in my behavior at that time. But I learned over the next uh, 20, 22 years or so what the risk really was. And I learned it through not getting the promotions I thought I should get, not being able to get jobs that I wanted because I didn't have a bachelor's degree, and the companies required that as a jumping off point. So my risk tolerance was huge. I was going to do whatever it took to complete my degree. So I went back to school. I had 3 teenage sons. I was married. My wife was sick. Um, and I went to school full time and worked full time through my bachelor's degree. And I finished it in 4 years. I started out with 29 credits, finished it in 4 years, had like a 3.2 or 3.3 GPA. Highest GPA I'd ever had in my life, including high school. So the reward was huge. And the reward was paid off in more ways than one. But the biggest reward was that I had finally um, accomplished a goal I set for myself in 1986. And I did it under adverse conditions, but I created those adverse conditions. I'm it's not that it's not that I couldn't get into a university. It's not that I couldn't pay for the university. I could do all that. I just blew it. And so the the the, the pain and that risk, I realized it. It's called realized risk. Not that you have a this idea of realized. In the terms of economics and business, when I say something is realized, it means it happens. Okay? It goes from theoretical to happening. So I had great tolerance. All right? Because the reward for me was was um a, was actually several rewards. Sorry. So for me, the reward was goal attained. And I came from a family where education was really important. And I was the only one of my siblings that didn't have a college degree. Uh, and that wore on me, even though, you shouldn't care what somebody else is doing. But trust me, it will wear on you. It will be in your mind all the time. I had my older brother who I'm close to in age got his degree in mathematics. So he's super smart. I mean, like, stupid, super smart. My younger brother, he has a PhD. Um, and my sister got her degree in social work. So, and my dad has a master's degree as well. So it was important that I attain this goal for me because of expectations that were on me and because of the way I was raised in my mindset. So that was one thing. My goal was attained. Okay. Let me put this so you guys can see, at least differentiate what I'm doing here. So goal was attained. So the second thing that happened is that I was able to get a better job, and that job just happened to be in a technical field, which I wasn't qualified for because when I started in technology in 2008, yeah, I had never done anything in technology before, ever. I could barely turn a computer on. I was a salesman because that's what you do if you don't have a college degree is you go to sales. So um, I had spent my entire adult life selling, and uh, the reason I got the job is because I'm a good salesman. So I went into the interview, I lied my butt off, and they hired me. And that's all well and good until I got there the first day, and I was completely and utterly lost. So, but I still was able to get the job. I worked my butt off to learn what was happening, and that's how I found IT. I found IT by accident. I had I didn't even know what IT was until 2008, 2009. And I stumbled on it by accident because a friend of mine at the company was the IT manager. So I started to volunteer, and with him, just helping him because he was doing it by himself. And I learned that I loved it. I was like, this is really cool. Uh, anyway, my friend left the company. I took over as the IT admin for the office in Utah, and I was rewarded with um, a new career field that I loved, and I still love to this day. So I got a new career field. Now, I had no idea that this was going to happen when I went to school. So the rewards kept piling up because then I decided, hey, I should get my master's degree. And so I was able to get a master's. Now, even though this is also a risk, it turned into a reward because of my master's. I was able to become an adjunct, and then I became full time at UVU. Now, as you can see, a lot of times the rewards aren't always readily visible or quantifiable. Okay, as you can see from my experience with school, The reward I was looking for was to feel better about myself by attaining a goal and to get a better job or to make more money. Okay, I didn't anticipate getting a better job. I got my bachelor's degree in business management, but I was able to get a better job, and then from that job, I was able to break into even a newer career field of IT, which led me to a master's degree. And then I got hired as an adjunct, found out how much I loved it, and I was able to come on UVU full time. So there was a bunch of rewards that happened because of the risk I took with school. And I, I don't know if the rewards are finished yet. I have no way of knowing. And that's the same with you guys. And that's the same with a lot of things that we do for a risk. Whether you buy a house or you train for a marathon or you buy a new car or you get married or you have children, all of these things are a risk because they can have adverse effects on you in different ways. So, now that we understand that there's a risk reward um, and there's a risk tolerance involved, let's put it into business terms, okay? And believe it or not, you guys do this all the time too. This is called cost benefit analysis. And I told you guys at the beginning of the semester that this would be, um, you would feel like sometimes this was an economics class. Well, this is your economics lesson today. Cost benefit analysis. It's really simple. Um, Instead of risk, we're going to say, what's the cost? So this is your risk, and then uh, what's the reward? And the reward or the benefit is reward. So the cost benefit analysis can be extremely simple or it can be extremely complicated, all depending on what it is we are talking about. But the same steps and processes are done no matter what you're talking about. Sometimes they're done in people's heads. Um, you Without even thinking about it. An example would be you're an IT admin and your desk, and people continually ask you for HDMI cables, and you're like, man, everybody seems to be wanting HDMI cables now. So I jump on Amazon and I order 10 new HDMI cables. Well, I didn't sit down and make a big cost benefit analysis spreadsheet because I knew that there was a cost involved, but I immediately knew the benefit. My customers, the employees of the company where I work, they were my customers. They needed HDMI cables to do their job um, in a better way. Okay, made them more productive. So you do that cost benefit analysis in your brain all the time. So on a bigger level, the reason it's important for you to understand cost benefit analysis is this. The IT department, which is where I mean, most of you are going to end up working, or uh, in some other technical department. Maybe you're going to be a developer, maybe whatever. But any of these departments like that, you are um, a liability. Now, that doesn't mean that you're a liability in the sense that you're going to go do something stupid like, uh, like Charlie Sheen liability or, somebody like that. You're a liability in the sense that you uh, produce no revenue. It's that simple. IT department, technical departments, we are support people. We support whatever the business mission is of the company where we work. So, because we don't produce revenue, we're a liability. That means that when you look at the accounting books and you look at where we fit in, we are on the payroll, which is a liability. We're on all of the benefits, that's another liability. But we're not on any of the asset parts, which are revenue, um, items that are purchased that have value, things like that. So, because we're a liability, that means that we must prove let's not say proof. Let's say we have to justify our cost. All right. Now, that's usually pretty simple to do. We can justify our cost because every company now runs on technology. If we don't have, if I mean, if a company's technology goes down, business comes to a screeching halt. So it's pretty easy to justify our cost as a department. But what happens when you want to upgrade? You might want to upgrade your hardware or software, or maybe you want to migrate to the cloud. All right. These are not inconsequential costs. These are expensive. Any of these. Now, again, depending on your company, there will be different procedures for you to go through. But I really want to impress this on you guys, okay? When we're talking about risk management, this is one portion of it, which is a cost benefit analysis. You have to understand how the business world decides if something is going to work for them or not. You also need to understand this. They do not speak geek. They do not speak our language that we use at work. They are not going to speak it. They're not interested in learning it, and they never are going to learn it. If you pop in and you talk to your the CEO or the CFO and you start to explain why we need a new server because our CPUs are old and outdated and there's new ones that have more cores that provide us more virtual cores and we can have faster RAM, and now we can actually have the NVMe M2 PCIe in servers. They have no idea what you're talking about and they don't care. So you have to be able to speak their language. So what's their language? The language of business. What's the language of business? It's money. Some people say it's accounting. Same thing. Okay? So You have to learn to speak this language right here. If you don't speak this language, then you are going to find out really quickly that um, they will ignore you because they don't have time. Okay? You have to learn to speak their language. So, part of speaking their language is understanding the keywords that they're looking for. All right? They want to know, how is this going to benefit the company? And when I say benefit the company, what I'm really saying is make us more money. That's what they want to know. How is what you're asking for going to make us more money? So you need to be able to um, express that the answer to that question um, in terms that they understand. I'll give you an example. We want uh, a couple of new servers. So what we have to do is convince them that spending 40 grand on each server is worth it. Well, what is it that would cause them to understand the value there? What you could do is you could do a comparison between what we have now and what the new equipment will be. You can do comparisons on processing times, storage, um, read-write speeds, all that kind of stuff. Now, you're not going to talk to them about that in those terms, but that's what you're going to do. You're going to do your homework. Then you're going to go in, and when you meet with them, you're going to say, okay, here's what we want, and here's what this is going to do for us. Remote workers, our sales force, will be able to access more data remotely and access it faster. Our backup system will be faster. Therefore, if there's some type of catastrophe, we can have the company up and running much faster than with what we currently have. It will also increase the productivity of office people because now the file shares and the other things are going to be faster. They love to hear that because efficiency equals profitability. All right. So when they start, you have to present it in those terms. Migrating to the cloud. Some companies, a lot of companies are doing that now, and it's expensive. So you're going to have to be able to come up with some type of a way of explaining why going to the cloud is going to be better than working on-prem. And so whatever those arguments are, you have to turn them into something that the CEO and the CFO and the board care about. So what do they care about? We already talked about it. They care about increasing revenues. They care about efficiency, and most important, they care about profitability. And that's what you need to do. That's where you need to be focused. All right. Now, a cost benefit analysis could look like this as in the technology area. So you have your quantitative benefits, all right? And so in economic terms, quantitative means you can put a number to it, right? As opposed to qualitative, where it's more of a non-tangible benefit. Quantitative is it's hard science, it's math, and you can prove it. So you list all of your non-reoccurring costs, okay? So these are things that you are going to buy, and once you buy them, you really don't have any more cost associated with them, right? You don't have to pay um, subscription renewals, uh, support contracts. But you see, there's a 5-year thing here, okay? The reason you're doing this is that it's like you're trying to create a budget. And so you're going through and saying, okay, well, in the first year, we're going to buy one server. In the second year, we're not going to buy any. In the third year, we're going to buy another one. Desktops, every year, we're going to plan on buying uh, 10. Maybe laptops, we're going to buy 25. Um, and so you put those out there, and you come up with a total amount for non-reoccurring. And then you have reoccurring costs, right? Maintenance and upgrades on software, laptops. I had that up there. Sorry, desktops. Um, so these are reoccurring costs. These are going to be happening a lot. Now here's your benefits, right? So the benefits would be, hey, look, right now we're doing contracts that are worth $23 million a year. And we can increase these contracts because our salespeople can go out and get more business because of the new technology that we have, and the technology that is more secure, technology that is faster, technology that meets the demands that people have. Okay? Now, here are your risks: potential losses or fines, right? So these are compliance based. And this is something that you will learn about in 4700. We talk quite a bit about compliance. These are all different compliance standards, and there's even more. This was just quickly just giving people ideas. Risk mitigation. That's what we're going to talk about next. Okay, and then you come up with everything, and so at the end, um, when you come in here, this is a this is just a oh, I just forgot the name of these. It's a kind of table, pivot table. There's a pivot table, and so it basically it just condenses everything, and you can come down here and say, okay, our total benefit, right? $146 million. Okay. Now we didn't put our reoccurring costs in here, but if I were to put a reoccurring cost in here of, let's say it's uh, $75,000. All right, non-reoccurring, and then reoccurring. Let's say it's 50,000. All right. So then this is going to give us what we want. This is equal to hang on. That doesn't matter. You get my point. I'm not going to waste any time right here. So we're going to add up our costs. We already added up our benefits. We're going to subtract any costs from the benefit, and then we're either going to have a positive number or a negative number. If you have a negative number, then it's probably not going to happen. If you have a negative number for the first year and second year, but positive numbers years 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, then chances are you will get to do it. But even a positive number, you may not get to do it because it might not be positive enough because money is finite. It's not it's not an infinite resource for companies. They have a finite amount of money. Now, it might be a lot of money, but it still has a limit. And you're going to bring them what you think their risk reward is, their cost benefit, and say, look, there's a benefit here. And they're going to look at it and they say, okay, we have to invest X in order to get Z, because Y is our uh, yeah, you get what I'm saying, right? We have to invest X if we want to get Y. And then they're going to compare that to other projects that are also vying for the money. And there may be a project out there that costs the same amount of money, but has a much higher benefit to the company. Well, then that's where they're going to go. So you have to remember it's not always just being able to prove that your cost that that your project and its risk reward is greater than that it's positive and it's going to happen. You have to take into consideration too that they're dealing with a finite budget and they have to spread that into projects that they feel will be the most profitable for the company. All right, enough of that part. Now, I'm going to end this lecture here, and then I am going to do a second lecture, and we're going to talk about a little bit more about risk and some of the ways that you can handle it. So, thank you for watching the lecture. I hope you learned some things, and there's going to be a second part here. I hope you enjoy that too.